You are listening to Crime Unraveled, a Buck Taylor novel by Chuck Morgan.
Chapter 9. The SUV driver parked in front of the Velasquez Enterprises headquarters building, slid his 6'4" frame out of the SUV and stretched. He reached in and grabbed his black Stetson off the front seat and placed it on his head. He looked at the company headquarters building. Ramon Velasquez had spared no expense to build his modern metal and glass monument to his empire. With glass windows running floor to ceiling, the 3-story masterpiece was an incredible display of his wealth and business acumen. The driver thought it was a waste of money, but then money was no problem for his employer. He strode across the parking lot, used his employee badge to pass through security, and waved to the 2 guards at the front desk. They waved back. They had all heard of the driver, but he rarely showed up at the headquarters building. There were a lot of stories about the mystery man, from the close to real to the absurd. Rumors circulated that he had been a criminal befriended by Velasquez, and one version of the story portrayed him as a former military special operator hired to address any potential issues. Another story said that he was the lover of either one of the sisters or of Velasquez himself. The truth was much simpler. Dutch Heinrich and Ramon Velasquez had been friends since they were born. Dutch's father was the mine foreman in one of the early Velasquez mining ventures, and the ore he produced made the Velasquez family a lot of money. When Dutch's father was killed in a cave-in, Ramon's father promised to take care of Dutch, and when Ramon took over the company, Dutch came with him. Dutch had been in the Marines, but he wasn't a special operator. He had been dishonorably discharged for beating another Marine into a coma. After serving time in a military brig, he was sent out into the world, but now he was a lot stronger and smarter than when he first joined up. Ramon saw the potential, and Dutch became his problem solver. For Dutch, the arrangement was perfect. He was paid a lot of money, and all he had to do was make sure people did what they were supposed to do or face the consequences. Dutch loved his job. Today was a good day for Dutch. He liked keeping busy, and today was a busy day that had started very early and was not done yet. Dutch checked the directory in the lobby, ran his finger down a long list of employees, and found the one he needed. He pushed the up button and stepped into the elevator. Dr. Timothy Woodman sat behind his desk in the small office that looked out over the high desert behind the headquarters building. He never liked the view, found it too stark for his tastes. He preferred to look at the mountains and lakes and trees. From his office there wasn't a tree to be seen, and the mountains were too far away to enjoy. He picked up the latest report from the mine and studied the notes from the on-site geologist. His first review of the rare earth metals discovery, several months back, indicated a large field. This new report was so much better, and surprising in a good way. The find was vast and would take years to develop. He knew this would make Ramon Velasquez very happy. He had set the report aside and started an email to Ramon when his office door opened. He looked up and froze. He had never met the boss's enforcer, but there was no doubt that the monster of a man standing in his doorway was none other than Dutch Heinrich. "Dr. Woodman?" Timothy nodded. Dutch stepped into the office and closed the door. "The boss wants to thank you personally for the extra work you helped him with. Everything worked as planned, maybe even better. There might be a nice reward coming your way, since you have been discreet. But first, he wants me to take you up to look at one of the fault lines. He thinks the landslide might have caused some damage that might impact the new mine site." Timothy pushed back in his chair. "Right now?" "Yes, sir. You know Mr. Velasquez. He wants what he wants when he wants it. Sorry for the inconvenience?" Timothy stammered and stood up. "No inconvenience. Let me just shut down my computer." "By the way," asked Dutch, "have you seen Dr. Mortensen? I stopped by his office and no one has seen him today." Timothy placed his laptop in his shoulder bag and looked at Dutch. "He called in sick this morning. Missed an important geology department meeting about the new finds." "Why?" "Mr. Velasquez asked me to bring him along, since he helped you on the special project. I'll just catch up with him later." Something about the way Dutch smiled when he said it sent an icy shiver up his spine. There was nothing threatening about the way he said it. Just a feeling. He slung his bag over his shoulder, and they headed out the door. Timothy stopped at the front desk and signed out, and they headed out the door and across the parking lot. As he walked around the SUV, he never noticed the black tape that obscured part of the license plate. He slid into the passenger seat, and Dutch pulled out of the parking lot. Dutch followed the main driveway away from the building, and turned onto an old dirt road that led farther up into the dry, dusty hills. Timothy tried to make small talk with Dutch, but he was focused on the drive, so he sat back and pulled out his phone. Half an hour later, Dutch stopped along a small ridge and killed the engine. "Follow me, doctor," he said as he slid out of the SUV. Timothy slid out, slung his bag over his shoulder, and ran to catch up to Dutch. He looked around as they walked. He knew there were several small fault lines throughout the area, but he didn't recognize the area they were walking through, and he wondered how the boss would have seen something this far from the landslide. Dutch stopped at the end of a small crevice, more of a split in the crusty ground. Timothy stepped up next to him. "What am I looking at?" asked Timothy, trying to catch his breath from the climb to the ridge. Dutch pointed to a small crack at the bottom of the crevice about 30 feet down. "Mr. Velasquez doesn't remember that crack being here before the landslide." Timothy set his bag on the ground and stepped closer to the edge, holding the shoulder bag strap in one hand. He shaded his eyes with his hand and stared into the abyss. "I don't see anything that looks fresh," he said. He hadn't noticed Dutch take a couple of steps back from the edge. The bullet made almost no sound as it entered his skull behind his left ear, and he never felt his body land on the hard ground at the bottom of the crevice. Dutch had grabbed for the shoulder bag, not realizing Timothy still held it, but he was a second too slow, and the bag went into the crevice with Timothy. He walked to the edge and looked down. "Fuck. How the hell am I gonna get that?" He stared into the crevice. Not finding an easy answer, he removed the silencer from the black pistol and slid it into his back pocket. He put the pistol back in the shoulder holster under his leather vest and walked away. "Ah, screw it. I'll tell him I destroyed it." He pulled out his phone and speed dialed a number. "It's done, but Mortensen wasn't in his office," said Dutch when the call was answered. "Find him?" said the voice on the other end of the call. "No problem." He disconnected the call and headed back down the trail to his SUV. He would have preferred to finish this job and head home and get some sleep, but he knew that wasn't going to happen just yet. He slid into his SUV, pulled out his laptop and searched the company directory for Dr. Jack Mortensen's address. He found what he was looking for, put the car in drive, and headed back towards the office and then on to Gypsum.
Thank you for listening to this chapter of Crime Unraveled, a Buck Taylor novel by Chuck Morgan. You can find the entire crime series as well as other novels by Chuck Morgan at chuckmorganbooks.com or on Amazon.